Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant, where I give my in-depth analysis of all the pay-per-views that I watch in the WWE Network. This entire month of January, I will be talking about all the Royal Rumble pay-per-views, so today I'll be reviewing the 2005 installment of the Royal Rumble. So kicking off the show is a matchup between Edge and Shawn Michaels, stemming from their altercation at the New Year's Revolution pay-per-view that same year, only a few weeks prior to this, which I did review here on the channel, cheap plug if you want to go back and check it out. But a great match to kick off the show. It felt fresh. A big rub for Edge, who is very much on the rise at this point in time. Of course, he would go on to WrestleMania to win the first ever Money in the Bank ladder match, and almost exactly a year later would go on to win the WWE Championship in the main event of the following year's Royal Rumble pay-per-view. Well, he would defend the title that show, but you know what I mean, though. But a great match to kick off the show between Edge and Michaels. We would get a great amount of time, about almost 20 minutes, 18 and a half minutes, so great time there. And Edge having a very strong showing against the former WWE Champion. And of course, it would benefit Edge only to be in the same ring, in the same match as Shawn Michaels, but they gave him a huge rub by giving him the victory over Shawn Michaels, not only facing him, but beating him too. So it really much made him look like a threat going into WrestleMania, even though he would be involved in the Money in the Bank ladder match, the first ever one at that. So an awesome match to kick off the show. A lot of cool spots. Edge mocking Shawn Michaels at various points in the contest, which I thought was very, very funny. Doing a signature strut and the signature poses and stuff like that. So I thought it was hilarious. So a great match to kick off the show. Great result too. It's Edge. With Edge coming out victorious as the victor in that contest after utilizing dirty tactics. So up next, we would get a casket match between The Undertaker and Heidenreich. Now, this was as good of a match as you're going to get out of Heidenreich, and of course, Undertaker, one of the best in the business, but a lot of people tend to overlook some of the crappier matches that he's had in his career, including these series of matches that he had with Heidenreich. And why this feud went on as long as it did, I have no idea. And it wasn't a terrible matchup. It was okay for what it was, but it really didn't do anything for anyone involved, because Undertaker was already going on to WrestleMania to defend the streak against against a real up-and-comer in Randy Orton, not Heidenreich. But you would think, like the Edge and Michaels matchup, that it would give Heidenreich a rub against, one of the most iconic figures in the business. But Heidenreich, a couple of months later, wasn't even on the WrestleMania card, for one thing. And then that summer, he would go on to reform the Road Warriors. I mean, he wasn't even a part of the original Road Warriors, Legion of Doom. But he would team up with Animal to go after the WWE Tag Team titles, and he would essentially become a joke before getting released in, I think, either late 2005 or early 2006. So this whole Royal Rumble, this whole feud between Heidenreich and Undertaker was basically a waste of time. This would not be the first time, would not be the last time that Undertaker would feud with someone that WWE thought was the next big thing, for lack of a better term, not to quote Brock Lesnar or Paul Heyman there, but that they thought would be the next big thing. They would pair him with a fellow big guy in The Undertaker, and the feud really went nowhere, and it was just a shame to see. So the match, like I said, was not bad. It only went about 13 minutes. It was an okay casket match. Heidenreich was not terrible. He was okay. He had a good look. You would think that he'd be, he had that theme, a very addictive theme too. It was Hi, Dick, Heidenreich. Hi, Dick, Heidenreich. His theme wasn't bad. He had like a Nazi look, which was really weird. He had a really weird look. And he was not terrible, but they booked him really, really strangely. Like, I think his career really went downhill after the whole thing, the whole rape thing with Michael Cole and the poetry, and it was really weird. Like, they had a backstage segment on the show between Snitsky and Heidenreich, where Snitsky would come out and aid Heidenreich in this contest before Kane would come out and somewhat reform the Brothers of Destruction to fend off Snitsky. And that was kind of cool because, Edge and, Snitsky and Kane would have a mini feud at that point in time. But still, though, it was really, really weird, and he was not a terrible wrestler, but that backstage segment where they had Snitsky and Heidenreich backstage, and the two were like, it was really weird. I can't even describe it. You're going to have to go back and watch it for yourself. I mean, watch at your own risk, but it was really weird. And maybe that was the death of the whole Heidenreich character that kind of took away from the intimidation factor of him. I'm not really sure, but it was what it was. It was okay, and he was not terrible. But the match itself, like I said before, was not bad. But in retrospect, in the long term, it really did not do anything, of course, for The Undertaker, because he was already a made star by that point, obviously. Could have, been inducted in the WWE Hall of Fame the very next day, but it really did nothing to benefit Heidenreich, because the guy lost all of his matches against The Undertaker. He went nowhere after this. He was not even on the WrestleMania card, so it really was a glorified waste of time. Up next for the WWE Championship, Big Show and Kurt Angle contending for the gold in a triple threat match against the then champion, John Bradshaw Layfield. So the match itself was good, only went about 12 minutes, could have used some more time to be more memorable. I forgot all about this matchup, I forgot this match was even on the show. But of course, it was par for the course during JBL's reign for him to, be assisted by interference in order to retain his championship. This matchup was no exception. The matchup would see interference from JBL's The Club, or what was it called at the time? The Cabinet, with Orlando Jordan and the Bashams. They would get involved to help JBL retain the WWE title. Like I said, the match was okay. It was not a great WWE title match, but like they talked about in my last review of the 2004 Royal Rumble, where we got Brock Lesnar versus Hardcore Holly for the WWE title, the Royal Rumble matchup is not about the world title matches. It is all about the Royal Rumble matchup. That's the only reason why people are buying this pay-per-view. Of course, you'll get your occasional big-time World Championship matchup like we did with Punk and Rock in the 2013 Royal Rumble, which really boosted up a buy rate because Rock was going for the championship and he won on that show. But, for the most part, though, the pay-per-view is being bought by people for the sole reason of the Royal Rumble matchup itself, not the title matches. So it really didn't matter that the WWE title was no big blockbuster bout on this show. And the interference really didn't do anything to help JBL make him look like a threat, but it was what it was. But it was also on the show in a backstage segment. We would get a segment between JBL, the Cabinet, and the then SmackDown general manager Teddy Long, talking about the next month's title defense between the Big Show and JBL in a barbed wire steel cage match at No Way Out. So, although I was not a fan of the matchup itself, a barbed wire steel cage match, that's just so random and it's so out of nowhere. But still, and I've yet to watch that matchup. I'm just not a fan of the idea of that. I've yet to watch the pay-per-view or the match or whatever, and I probably won't anytime soon. But still, I thought it was a cool concept for them to announce the next WWE title defense for JBL a month out to the pay-per-view audience. Maybe the people that only watch the pay-per-views don't watch the shows. I don't know who that is. But it was cool for them to announce that a month out instead of waiting for even the next week's SmackDown. So that was pretty cool. So, okay stuff there. We would get to the World Heavyweight Championship matchup. Triple H defending against former Evolution stablemate Randy Orton. Now, these two had a lot of history, not only, of course, in Evolution, but the feud would go on from late August, early September of 2004, going into January of 2005. So a really long feud between Triple H and Randy Orton, but it just really stood out to me when watching this matchup that Randy Orton was so over at this point in time, probably more so with the women and the little kids, but he was so over as a babyface, and they would go on to turn him heel, which is probably the best thing for him, because obviously he works better as a heel, but he was really, really over going into this contest, and he would get booed at some points. I don't know if people were starting to favor Triple H. I know he wouldn't turn babyface for another year or so, but that was a little weird. We would get some boos from the male crowd, but like I said, he was more over with the women and the kids than he was with, our demographic, the males, and, like my demographic, whatever. But still, though, a really good matchup between Triple H and Randy Orton. These two have never really had the best of matches. They've had some really good matches. I would never classify, maybe this is just me, maybe this is just personal bias, but I would never classify any of the matches that Triple H and Randy Orton have had over the years, whether it be in 04, 05, 06, 07, 08, 09, all the years that these two have faced off, I would never classify any of their matches as being great. I've talked about this before, and I'll talk about my WrestleMania 25 review when I get to that. Like I've said before here on WrestleRant, I will be reviewing every installment of WrestleMania, with the exception of those I've already reviewed, like 17, 19, 20, 21. I won't be talking about those. You can go back and watch those reviews already here on the WrestleRant video, YouTube channel. But I'll get to that when I get to the my WrestleMania 25 review. But I've made no bones about this in the past that I was not a fan of that WrestleMania main event between Triple H and Randy Orton. None of the matches they had that year were great. They've had some really good matches, like I said. This was a really good match. I would not call it a great match. Most of it was very, very slow. And they probably could have gave more time to the WWE title match, the Triple Threat title match, instead of having this go 21 minutes. It was a really long match. Like I said, really solid, really good. Orton had a good showing, but it was not really all that exciting down the stretch, and Orton had a strong showing in defeat, but it was not a great match. These two have always had good chemistry. It's like Cena and Orton for the most part. I think Cena and Orton have actually had better matches than Orton and Triple H ever did, personal opinion, but it is what it is. But still, it's like Cena and Orton, that those two never really had that same chemistry as like an Austin or a Rock or a Piper and Hogan. they never had those kind of caliber of matches, despite the fact how many times they faced each other. They faced each other, Triple H and Orton, about 1,000,000 times over the last decade, but I wouldn't classify their matches as anything legendary. Maybe their feud, but the matches they had were never anything legendary, in my opinion. But still, though, a solid World Heavyweight Championship matchup. Triple H would come out victorious after utilizing the sledgehammer. Still the World Heavyweight Champion. We get to the Rumble match itself. I loved the Rumble match on the show. I thought everything about it was really, really well done. And maybe it's just because I'm a sucker for the year of 2005. I thought there was a lot of things to like about the year of 2005, and there were a lot of shining stars, a lot of great stars that WWE built up over the course of that year in the form of John Cena, Batista, Rey Mysterio, Edge, Randy Orton. There were so many shining stars throughout the course of 2005, so that's maybe why I really love that year. But everything about this Rumble I really, really liked, and it's definitely one of my favorite Rumbles that I've watched since I've started reviewing these Royal Rumble pay-per-views. Probably my favorite Rumble since I started watching since 2000, since I started watching the 2000 installment. I thought everything about the show, everything about this matchup, this Royal Rumble matchup was very well booked, with Chris Benoit, who was of course, the victor the previous year, who started out at number 1 on this year, and in this year's installment, would start out as number 2, and would, of course, last longer than almost everybody else in the matchup, with the exception of Edge and Rey Mysterio. He was the longest reigning. He was the Iron Man in this matchup. He lasted 47 minutes until, I think he lasted maybe until the final 5. But still, though, a lot of, Chris Benoit had a great showing here. Also, Edge and Mysterio had a very great showing with 40 and 38 minutes, respectively. Still, though, everything about this Rumble I really, really liked, even down to the very first 2 people who started out this Rumble. And the Rumble, to me, always has to have a very first 2 strong starting out. Otherwise, I mean, the whole Rumble isn't ruined, but if you look back in years prior, like I'm thinking back in recent years, but in 2009, I think it might have been Mysterio and Morrison, which was okay. They had a lot of good chemistry, but history, they never really had any. In 2011, they had Punk and Bryan kick it off, which really reminded me of this show. Benoit and Eddie really reminded me of when Punk and Bryan kicked it off back in 2011. 2012, it would not last long, but The Miz and Alex Riley, a lot of history there, obviously. 2013, Ziggler and Jericho, a lot of history there. So, like this Royal Rumble, I thought this was great. Like those Royal Rumbles, I thought the first 2 in this Rumble were awesome. Eddie and Benoit, a lot of history. They would close off Mania, celebrating their respective world titles, and now we're kicking off the next year's Royal Rumble matchup. I thought that was awesome. Daniel Puder from Tough Enough actually did not last very long, was in here for a few minutes before getting his ass kicked by Hardcore Holly. And Eddie and Benoit, they would all take turns beating the shit out of Daniel Puder. I don't know if that was a shoot or what, just to show that he was a punk, but I don't know. It was what it was. He would get some screen time, so that was all really that mattered for Daniel Puder. Some other stories from this Rumble. Like I said before, I already praised Edge's performance in the opening matchup with Shawn Michaels. He had an awesome showing in this Royal Rumble, eliminating a lot of superstars. 5 eliminations for Edge in this contest. Definitely one of the more... I think the only other superstar to eliminate as many people as he did was Batista, the eventual winner. So, very good, great stuff there from Edge, showing a lot of potential that he was a future star in the business before going on to win the Money in the Bank, like I talked about before, at WrestleMania 21. Rey Mysterio had a really good showing here. He would make it down to the Final 4. Kenzo Suzuki was in this matchup. He never really did anything. I talked about how big of a bust he was in my Great American Bash 04 review. Muhammad Hassan was a really funny one because it was in this matchup that we had... It was in this Rumble we had Raw versus SmackDown. There weren't any surprise returns like we saw in 2000 or in 01, 02, 04. This Rumble was all about Raw versus SmackDown. And I think back in 05 as the epitome of what the brand split was, because that year was really all about Raw and SmackDown, like feuding with each other. That was like the peak of the brand split, in my opinion. Like, it was good early on, of course, but they wouldn't really enforce the rules in terms of the draft, and the draft that year I thought was awesome, and the Raw and SmackDown matches that we would get later on in the year I thought were great too. But this Rumble was really all about Raw and SmackDown. No legends. They didn't have to rely on any old cameos. What they relied on were the younger superstars, like I talked about before. They relied on They relied on the Batistas, the John Cenas, the Edges, the Rey Mysterios. They also had the Eddies and the Benoits, and a lot of great showings here between all those guys. But like I said before, going back to what I was saying, they had this big face-off between these 4 Raw guys, 4 SmackDown guys, and I just remember at that time, the 4 Raw guys that were in the ring were all going to be eventually in Money in the Bank. I think it was Edge, Benoit, Jericho, and Benjamin. I forgot who the 4 SmackDown guys were. I know Luther Reigns was among them, but and I think Booker T as well. But they all had this massive face-off between Raw and SmackDown. Crowd was getting amped for it. And then Muhammad Hassan comes down, who had just debuted a few weeks prior at the New Year's Revolution pay-per-view. You can go back and watch that or listen to that review here in the channel if you'd like. And Muhammad Hassan comes down, and they had a common enemy. Raw and SmackDown put their differences aside for that one moment, and they all eliminated Muhammad Hassan. I thought it was a great moment and showed how great the heat that he was getting at that time. And you can argue that it was cheap heat with all the anti-USA stuff. I understand that, but Muhammad Hassan, who was not even Indian, I mean, he wasn't even the character that he was portraying. He was actually like Italian, I think, which I did not know until like years later. But you know, he was not Arab American, like I guess the correct term I should use is what he was, you know, portraying himself as a character. But he was not that in real life. He was actually very Italian. But still, though, he was getting great heat for a guy that was really just getting started in WWE. For a guy that had just debuted no more than a month earlier, was getting awesome heat, especially the way they eliminated him, I thought was better than him sticking around for a while and becoming an afterthought in the matchup with everything else that went down. So I thought that was great. Muhammad Hassan, his elimination was a highlight. Kurt Angle would come in, or Shawn Michaels would come in for a few minutes, eliminating superstars left and right. Simon Dean got eliminated very quickly by Shawn Michaels. That was pretty funny. But, yeah, Shawn Michaels had a pretty good showing when he was in there. Kurt Angle would come down, and Kurt Angle, you know, dominated everybody that was in the ring. But he was only in the Rumble for about 30 seconds before Shawn Michaels eliminated him. So Shawn Michaels is doing his thing. Kurt Angle would come back out, take out Shawn Michaels, and that would kickstart the feud between those two going into WrestleMania 21 and the awesome match, the very underrated match that those two would have at that WrestleMania. So a very nice, you know, it was a simple but effective story being told between Michaels and Angle in this matchup, like I said before, planting the seeds for their eventual encounter at WrestleMania. The only real quote-unquote surprise that we would have in this Royal Rumble was Jonathan Coachman representing Raw. He lasted a lot longer than most people in this Rumble, which I thought was pretty comical. He was in the Rumble for 13 minutes, and, you know, Benoit would go after Jonathan Coachman early on in his appearance, but it wasn't until Flair came in, and it wasn't until when it came down to the nitty-gritty of the final few superstars that he would get eliminated by Ric Flair. But I was really surprised at how long Jonathan Coachman lasted, but the coach was always awesome. The coach was always great. He was so great at what he did, and and as a character, he owned his character. And it's so funny, too, because he debuted, I think, at the Rumble pay-per-view as a backstage interview as an announcer. I want to say it was either in the 01 installment or 2000. I think it was 2001. I could be mistaken. But when he debuted, he was a no-namer. He was like a Tom Phillips at that time. And, he comes in 5 years later with a lot of great heat in this Royal Rumble, lasting longer than almost half the guys in the Rumble, which is really funny. He did not eliminate anybody, but he had a really funny showing and, lasting longer than most people. So that was pretty good. But we came down to the final few superstars. Kane and Snitsky kind of furthered their feud by coming in as one of the final few people. Christian had a nice brief showing in there. He would not be in anything notable at WrestleMania. He was involved in the Money in the Bank ladder match, the first ever. But, coming out with Tyson Tomko, and he had a funny backstage segment with John Cena earlier on in the evening. And, the rapping and stuff like that, kind of planting the seeds for their feud in the summer of 2005. Christian never really got his due, but I won't go into rants on that here. That's another rant for another day. But we get down to the final four. And I tweeted this out last night in that I put this on my Twitter page. I took a picture of it. I screenshotted it. Batista and John Cena, I thought, were an amazing final two in this Royal Rumble. Like, some people, pointed out, Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker from 2007. And yes, Shawn Michaels and Undertaker were a great final two in the Rumble. And I'm not saying that they're the greatest final two competitors in the Royal Rumble, but in terms of building towards the future, Batista and Cena were the future of the Royal Rumble. And I can't remember the last time in a Royal Rumble since then that we have gotten two up-and-coming guys closing off the matchup, and either guy could have won. John Cena went on to WrestleMania anyway to face the WWE Champion JBL, so Either guy could have won this Royal Rumble, and that's what made it so suspenseful. That's what made it so great. That's what made it so exciting. That's what I loved about these final two guys. And the final four also involved Edge and Rey Mysterio, two guys that would also win at WrestleMania. Batista, Cena, Edge, and Rey Mysterio all won at WrestleMania that year. 05 was the year of those four guys. Even though Edge and Mysterio would win their first world titles in 06, and Batista and Cena would win their first world titles at WrestleMania 21 in 05. Still, though, I love the Final Four kind of building toward the future, which I thought was great. You know, we haven't gotten that. Like I said before, let's think back now. Like in 2014, Batista won. That was obviously not the future. 2013, won by John Cena. 2012, we had Jericho in the final two, not really building towards the future, even though Sheamus won. 2011, Santino and Del Rio is the exception because, you know, Santino, obviously, he's not the future. He wasn't even a young guy. He was, you know, just another comedy figure on the roster. And, 2010, won by Edge, not the future. 01, won by Orton, not the future. Cena, same thing in 08. 07, The Undertaker. 06, Rey Mysterio, kind of the future, but he eliminated Triple H and Randy Orton, and Randy Orton was kind of the future, but at that point in time, and then Triple H was not the future, though. So 05 was really the last time, the final two, that it would really get suspenseful between these two, and the people were going crazy. They loved John Cena, they loved Batista, representing Raw, representing SmackDown. Loved the final few minutes of this Royal Rumble, and Edge and Mysterio looked strong in defeat when they got eliminated too. But of course, the Rumble match, the Rumble finish, was not planned. I mean, a lot of people know this by now, but the elimination from Batista and Cena, it just so happened, and thankfully this did not get fucked up. And I mean, the finish was fucked up in that it was not supposed to happen. But thankfully it did not get fucked up in that Batista was the first one to hit first and not John Cena. And if Cena won, they would have had to change their plans. All this other shit. But thankfully, it just so happened that they touched the ground at the very same time. So they had to improvise. They had the referees, which I thought was great. You know, like I said, the whole story of this Royal Rumble, for the most part, we would get a lot of cool stories. But the overall story in this Rumble was that it was Raw versus SmackDown. So it was only fitting that it came down to a Raw and SmackDown guy. And the referees, the Raw referees were favoring Batista, who represented Raw at the time. And the SmackDown referees were representing the SmackDown guy, John Cena. So I thought that was really cool. Mr. McMahon comes out in a fit of rage, of course, tearing his quads, which made the countdown on the WWE Network for like one of the most infamous moments. I don't think in Rumble history, but I think just in WWE history, like in terms of spoofs or mess-ups or whatever, it was just so comical. Like, I didn't even know that was the case at the time. The first time I saw the conclusion to this Rumble on Batista's DVD, I had no idea that was the case. I did not know that until a couple years later, that McMahon blew out not only one of his quads, but both of them when he came running to the ring in a fit of rage and hit both of his quads on the ring and had to sit down when making the announcement that the match would be restarted. The restart didn't last too long, but it was really cool with the Batista bomb into the FU and Batista ultimately taking out John Cena with a spinebuster, eliminating him and going on to WrestleMania to contend in the main event for the World Heavyweight Championship against Evolution stablemate Triple H, and kind of building off that story that they teased at New Year's Revolution. And the crowd loved Batista on the show. They loved John Cena too. When people really wanted to see him win, like that was kind of like a culture shock compared to 10 years later, when people actually when people actually like John Cena. I mean, people like John Cena now, but you know what I'm saying. Like, he was a favorite to win the Rumble, which is, you know, just crazy to think about. That was 10 years ago, too. And hopefully, I'm hoping we see something similar in this year's Royal Rumble with the future. Like, a dream Final Four in this year's Rumble would consist of Ziggler, Ambrose, Reigns, and Bryan. Like, those are the four guys that you need to build towards the future with, and I think that'd be amazing if they did something like that in this year's Royal Rumble, 10 years removed from when they had a great Final Four in the 05 Royal Rumble. So, needless to say, I thought everything about this Rumble was great. We even got some tension between Batista and Flair at the end, which kind of planted the seeds already. They already had planted the seeds, you know, early on in the year. But that already, you know, furthered the tension between the Evolution stablemate, with Batista breaking out on his own and winning the World Heavyweight Championship from Triple H, making for a great, intriguing story going into WrestleMania. So I loved everything about the Rumble match. Probably my favorite Rumble match that I've watched so far in my Royal Rumble reviews. The Rumble pay-per-view on the whole, I thought was very, very good. Edge and Michaels kicking off the show on a high note. Undertaker and Heidenreich, a decent match. The casket match was not as bad as it could have been, so I'll say that much. The two world title matches, left something to be desired. I think they were both solid to very good matches. They were not great, especially the WWE title match. I thought that was okay. Could have used more time. And the interference didn't really do anything for me, but it was par for the course, like I said before, with JBL and his character at that time. And Triple H and Orton was very good as well. Not great, like I said before. Never really enjoyed the chemistry those two had. But a very good match between Triple H and Orton. And I love the Royal Rumble matchup, so needless to say, go back and watch this Royal Rumble pay-per-view as a whole. It really did help build towards the future for the most part. Like, you wouldn't see Heidenreich contending for the world title or, Big Show or Angle. Like, those weren't really future stars, so to speak. But the Rumble match itself really helped build towards the future. A lot of fresh faces involved in that. The way that it was booked, the entire thing, I thought was fantastic. And the world title match was very good, too, and the opener especially. The bookend matches on the show, the Rumble match and the Edge Michaels match, I thought were phenomenal. So go back and watch those matches alone, if not the entire Rumble, which I thought was great. So that being said, folks, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Always appreciate it. My next WrestleRant video will be covering the 2007 Royal Rumble, and from there we'll talk about the 2008 installment, 2010, and 2011 installments before we wrap it up before the end of January. Like I said before, folks, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Always appreciate your viewing, your listening. Means a lot to me. We'll catch you in my next video. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch you guys then.